Hi, I'm Micah, and this is Poetry Postscript, and today we're going to be talking about this dude, Charles Baudelaire. Charles was a 17th century poet who loved to write about controversial topics like depression, death, and vampires.
Did someone say depression, death, and vampires?
Who are you?
I'm your inner emo kid. We're going to be talking about a lot of heavy subjects today, and I figured I'd better stop by or whatever.
Oh, great. T.S. Eliot once called Baudelaire the greatest exemplar in modern poetry in any language, and this is very true. Baudelaire was a very modern poet, taking most of his inspiration from the changing world around him, but in his own weird, twisted way. Charles Baudelaire was a French poet born in Paris. Baudelaire is mostly known for his 1857 volume of poems Les Fleurs du Mal, The Flowers of Evil. His themes of sex, death, lesbianism, metamorphosis, depression, urban corruption, lost innocence, and alcohol not only gained him loyal followers, but also lots of haters. The courts punished Baudelaire, his publisher, and the book's printer for offending public morality and forced him to remove 6 poems from the collection. But before we go there, let's learn a little more about him. Charles Baudelaire was born in Paris on April 9, 1821, to Joseph Francois Baudelaire and Caroline Archambault Dufay. Joseph Francois, who was 30 years older than his wife, died when Charles was 6. Baudelaire loved his mother, but wasn't so happy when she remarried to Captain, later General, Jacques Opic a year later. In 1833, they moved to Lyons, where Baudelaire attended a military boarding school, but was expelled just before graduation for not giving the teacher a note he had been passed in class. Baudelaire spent the next couple of years in Paris's Latin Quarter trying to make it as a writer, but accumulated debt. It is also believed he somehow got syphilis around this time. In 1841, his parents sent him on a ship to India, hoping to rid him of his non-conforming ways, but he left the ship and went back to Paris in 1842. When he returned, he received a major inheritance from his father, which allowed him to live the life of and define the term of a dandy, or someone who is wealthy and shows it through their clothes. He developed a love for clothing and spent quite a few days in the art galleries and cafes of Paris. He experimented with drugs such as hashish and opium. He met and fell in love with Jeanne Duval, who inspired the Black Venus section of Les Fleurs du Mal, or The Flowers of Evil. By 1844, he had spent nearly half of his money. His family made and won a court order that appointed a lawyer to make sure Baudelaire didn't blow the rest of his money by giving him an allowance. To make up for how much money he spent and had left, Baudelaire wrote art criticism, essays, and reviews for various journals. His early criticism earned him a reputation as an insightful and distinctive critic. In 1847, he published the autobiographical novel La Fanfarlo. His first publications of poetry also began to appear in journals in the mid-1840s. In 1854 and 1855, he published translations of Edgar Allan Poe, whom he called his twin soul. His translations were widely acclaimed. In 1857, Auguste Poulet-Malassis published the first edition of The Flowers of Evil. Baudelaire was so obsessed with the quality of the printing that he started living one door down to make sure the book and the production was okay. 6 of the poems, which described lesbians and vampires, were denoted too obscene by the Public Safety Section of the Ministry of the Interior, who banned it, and the ban wasn't lifted in France until 1949. In 1861, Baudelaire added 35 new poems to the cluster. The Flowers of Evil gave Baudelaire a spot of recognition. Writers such as Gustave Flaubert and Victor Hugo loved and wrote in favor of the poems. Flaubert even sent in a letter saying, "You have found a way to inject new life into Romanticism. You are unlike anyone else." Unlike earlier writers of romantic material, Baudelaire looked to the urban life of Paris for inspiration. He argued that art must create beauty from even the most non-poetic situations. The Flowers of Evil, with its explicit sexual content and thoughts of urban beauty and decay, only added to Baudelaire's reputation of a poète maudit, cursed poet. Baudelaire added to that reputation by exaggerating his quirks. For instance, he once asked a friend in the middle of a conversation, "Wouldn't it be agreeable to take a bath with me?" But because there are so many stories about his personality, it's hard to discern fact from fiction. In the 1860s, Baudelaire continued to write articles and essays on a variety of people and things. He also published prose poems, which were stitched together after he died, in 1869 as Petits Poèmes en Prose, Little Poems in Prose. By calling these non-conforming poems poems, Baudelaire was the first poet to make a revolutionary reshaping of the way a poem was written. In 1862, Baudelaire began to suffer from nightmares and increasingly bad health. He left Paris to go to Brussels in 1863 to give a series of lectures, but suffered from several strokes that resulted in partial paralysis. On August 31st, 1867, Charles Baudelaire died at the age of 46 in Paris. Although doctors at the time didn't mention it, it is likely that syphilis caused his death. Even after death, however, people still enjoyed and continue to enjoy his work, like the piece we'll be studying today, Meditation. Meditation has several different translations, so here's one of them.
Be wise, oh, my pain, and be more quiet. You begged for the evening. It comes. It is here. A strange atmosphere encases the city, to some bringing peace, to other stress. While most are mortal under the control of pleasure, the merciless torturer, gather remorse and regret from the slave's meal. My pain, give me your hand. Come with me. Far from them, see the dead years on balconies in the sky in old robes, only to emerge from the depths of the water, smiling with regret. The dying sun falls asleep under an arch, and like a cloud dragging to the east. Listen, my dear, hear the sweet night march.
So this poem starts off pretty normal, by addressing a character as our main one and creating a setting to place them in. This continues until the third section, which is tied in by finishing the sentence that ended the second stanza. This section almost starts a new poem by shifting the focus and setting completely. And then in the last section, we sort of return back to the corporeal world, seeing the sunset and watching the night crawl in. It can be viewed as a peaceful poem, hence the name Meditation.
Or it can be viewed as a very depressing poem, like the rest of his works. Why should this one be any different?
True, but keep in mind this is one of his happiest poems. Puts things into perspective, huh?
Well, here's my take on the poem. This guy, probably Baudelaire, is in pain. So much pain, he sees the past, represented by the slave's meal, the present, represented by the city and the sunset, and the future, with his present turned into dead years, in old clothes that were once brand new to him. His life is falling apart around him, and his pain is guiding him through the wreckage.
But then the beautiful sunset and stars distract him from that.
No, the sunset is his death. Sunset. He is the sun, and he is setting.
But what about the title? Meditation. He could be meditating, and the sunset is his pain and dark thoughts going away.
Well, meditation isn't a direct translation from French, more of a happy spin on the actual title, contemplation. Contemplation literally means the action of looking thoughtfully at something for a long time. What is that something? The steadily growing darkness of both depression and nighttime.
Yeah, true, but this is Teacher Bob's final, so let's try to lighten it up a bit.
Whatever.
Baudelaire uses many literary techniques. One of the most prominent is his use of descriptive language and adjectives to draw you into the story. Like, not just an atmosphere, but a strange atmosphere. And not just emerging from the water smiling, emerging from the depths of the water smiling with regret. It helps to get a clearer vision of what Baudelaire was thinking when he wrote this poem. Another literary device he uses is personification, by capitalizing words that wouldn't normally be capitalized, more specifically abstract words like regret, years, and evening, almost making these characters. Pleasure, for example, is a merciless torturer with slaves. This poem can also be used as an example of early surrealism. The way we whip back and forth between uncommon and common thoughts tries to blend the two together. The poem mentions many surreal things like dead years rising from the water. It doesn't follow the usual way of writing, by using a non-linear timeline and abstract ideas.
Hey, I enjoy this man's work. He gets me.
There we go, a little positivity out of you. Well, see you later then.
Yeah, sure.
When I was a young boy, my father...
This was Meditation by Charles Baudelaire. This man is crazy and creepy, but in all the good ways, like a psychological puzzle or a thriller movie. Next week we'll cover Baudelaire's twin soul, Edgar Allan Poe. Just kidding, next week's summer. Thanks for watching. Poetry Postscript was made with the help of these people,
and these websites. If you like this project, give it a good grade. And remember, Teacher Barb's class is always lit. Get it? Literature. Literary. Lit. Lit.